Hi, I'm Caroline, and today I'm going to read you a book called Freedom on the Menu. And this is based on a true story about protests that happened in Greensboro, North Carolina, called sit-ins. And these happened in 1960. The author of the book, Carole Boston Weatherford, went to college in Greensboro. And the illustrator is Jerome Laringue. Just about every week, Mama and I went shopping downtown. I loved having her all to myself for the afternoon. Whenever it was hot or we got tired, we'd head over to the snack bar at the Five and Dime store. We'd stand as we sipped our Cokes because we were not allowed to sit at the counter like the white people were allowed to do. Once, I watched a white girl swivel a stool as she spooned a banana split. In the empty seat beside her was a purse almost exactly like mine. "Can I have a banana split?" I begged Mama. "Not here, Connie," said Mama. "I'll fix you one at home." "Won't be the same," I grumbled. All over town, signs told Mama and me where we could and could not go. Signs on water fountains, swimming pools, movie theaters, even bathrooms. So clearly this is not fair that racist laws that support white supremacy made it illegal for Connie and her mom and other Black American people to go to the same places that white American people could go or do the same things that white people could do. So, what are some inequalities or things that are unfair that cause harm in your community where you live? And now might be a good time to pause and think about and talk through the things that are unfair in your community. Okay, let's continue. Everybody I knew obeyed the signs, except my great Aunt Gertie from New York. Once, when she visited, she drank from a whites-only fountain and said really loudly, "I've never heard of colored water. Have you, Connie?" Then she lifted me up so I could take a sip. I looked up from the fountain. "Y'all know better than that," a white man scolded. I started to say, "Sorry, mister," but Aunt Gertie just huffed. "I'm too old for silly rules." It was a really hot day, but the white man walked away without taking a drink after us. There weren't any signs up in the Five and Dime store, but we still knew how it was. Most people didn't expect change anytime soon, but my daddy thought different. "Dr. King's coming to town," he told us one morning. "Who's sick?" I asked. "He's not that kind of doctor, Connie. He's a minister and an activist who's working to make things better for us," said Daddy. "So we can go anywhere we please one day," said Mama. "Like the lunch counter?" I asked. "Yep," said Daddy, "and other places too." Later that week, our whole family went to hear Dr. King preach at the college chapel. I didn't really understand all of his speech, but I liked his booming voice. It sounded as if he believed God was on our side. Every few minutes, Mama said, "Amen," and when Dr. King sat down, everyone stood and clapped for a very long time. Soon after that, my brother and sister joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Everyone called it the NAACP. They let me tag along as they went door to door helping people register to vote. I've never voted in my whole life, said a white-haired lady leaning on a cane. Will I get to vote for the president? Yes, ma'am, I said. My brother wants to be president too when he's all grown. Tell him he's got my vote, she chuckled, and to hold on to those big dreams. Yes, ma'am, I'll tell him, I promised, thinking about my own dreams too. Times are changing, she said, as she handed us her voter registration form. Then one day, Mama and I went shopping downtown. We stopped at the snack bar just like always. I tugged at Mama's sleeve. Look over at the lunch counter. We know those boys. There sat 4 of my brother's friends from A&T College. Do they know they're in the wrong place? I whispered. Some rules have to be broken, Mama whispered back. What do you think Connie's mom means by some rules have to be broken? Take a minute to talk about that. All right, let's continue. I heard one of them order, coffee and a donut, please. I'm sorry, we can't serve your kind, said the white blonde-haired waitress, wringing her hands. The boys didn't move. Don't y'all understand English? A kitchen worker asked. Go on over to the snack bar, she hissed. Stop making trouble here. The manager tapped his foot angrily and jutted out his chin. They can sit there forever for all I care, he said, and stormed out of the store. An old white lady came up to the boys. I'm so proud of you, she said, clear as a bell so everyone could hear. I wish someone had done this sooner. The waitress kept wiping and re-wiping the counter, refilling the salt and pepper shakers and napkin holders, acting like she didn't see my brother's friends. Suddenly, the manager came back with a tall police officer. Let's go, Connie, said Mama. The manager shooed us right out of the store and then put up a closed sign. I couldn't wait to tell my brother. Why do your friends do that? I asked. If we can spend money at the store, it's only fair that we should be able to eat at the store's lunch counter, just like the white people. I guess so, I said. Think it'll work? Sometimes it's just important to try, said Daddy. The next day, Daddy showed me the newspaper. The headline said, Black students stand up by sitting down. They sat for 4 hours, said Daddy, peering over the newspaper. I'd be too hungry to wait that long, I said. Connie, they didn't really want food. They wanted to be allowed to get in and get food, same as if they were white. They wanted to be treated fairly. By Friday, we heard on the news how hundreds more had joined the sit-ins. The protests are growing, I told Daddy. I'm joining the sit-ins, said Brother, bursting into the room. I'm going to picket downtown, said my sister. I want to go too, I said. I'm plenty big enough to hold a sign and I know I can sit. It's good that you want to help, said Dad. But Connie, you're still too young for those things. I never get to do anything important, I pouted. You can help us make picket signs, said Sister. That's very important. The next morning, I handed Sister my little flag and protest sign for her to carry. We'll tell you about everything when we get home, said Brother. Turns out, I saw the protest on TV. Hundreds of people walked up and down the sidewalks in front of stores, restaurants, and movie theaters. I saw my own sister carrying the picket sign I made. And there was the back of my brother's head sitting at the lunch counter. My own brother. I'm just so proud of them, said Daddy. Me too, I said. I just pray there's no more trouble, Mama fretted. After a while, I watched the news on TV as much as Mama and Daddy. One night, I saw a report on the sit-ins. That doesn't look like our downtown, I said. Connie, the sit-ins have spread all over the South, said Daddy. And this sign says, "We shall not be moved." Just then, the phone rang. I answered it. Daddy, it's Sister. She got arrested at the lunch counter. She's in jail. My sister, who always got A's in school and never broke any rules, was in jail. Daddy raced to the police station, but Sister wouldn't let him get her out of jail. He told me how the students kept chanting, "Jail not bail, jail not bail." We can't just leave Sister here with the bad guys, I pleaded. She's made up her mind, Connie, said Mama, wiping away a tear. She wants to stay with other students and protest. In a few days, Sister came home. Promise me you'll stop picketing and protesting, I said. I can't do that, she said, hugging me very tightly. Now, instead of shopping downtown like we used to, Mama and I shopped in a catalog called the Sears Catalog. We leafed through the big, thick pages together. She even let me help pick out things to order, but we both knew it wasn't the same as shopping together. How long before the sit-ins are over? I said. They've been lasting for months. Until folks get what they want, said Mama. That summer, Mama, Daddy, and I finally went downtown. When we passed Woolworth's, I heard someone shout, "They're serving them at the lunch counter!" Daddy stopped so fast that the brakes screeched, and Mama and I jolted forward. We parked and ran to the lunch counter. There sat the women who worked in the restaurant's kitchen. They were all dressed up fancy and eating egg salad. I can't even stand the smell of egg salad, but I stood and watched them eat every bite. Looks pretty good, I said. Daddy and I shared big grins. The next day, Brother, Sister, and I made a special trip downtown. Brother wore a suit and tie. We girls wore hats and white gloves. At the lunch counter, I climbed up on the stool next to them. We'll have 3 hot dogs, 3 French fries, 2 coffees, 1 Coke, and 1 banana split, please, I told that blonde-haired waitress. Sister and Brother sipped coffee, and I twisted on my stool while we waited for our meals. Our food soon arrived. As I ate, the waitress plopped an extra cherry on a mound of whipped cream. She still looked nervous, but she smiled at me. It was the best banana split I've ever had. If you have a minute, I'd like to read you a little bit more about the real people who were a part of the Greensboro sit-in, and then ask a few questions that you can think about with your family. On February 1st, 1960, 4 college students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College sat down at Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. They asked to be served. The college freshmen, 17 and 18-year-olds, Franklin McCain, David Richmond, Joseph McNeil, and Azelle Blair, became known as the Greensboro Four. We were kids ourselves, said Joseph McNeil. After living that lifestyle of second-class everything, we said enough is enough. We didn't like not having dignity and respect, said Franklin McCain. I went out of that store feeling powerful. Within days, students from Bennett College, a black all-girls school, began sitting at the lunch counter too. White students from other local schools, Woman's College, Greensboro College, and Guilford College, also participated. Students not only sat at lunch counters, but made their own signs and marched on downtown sidewalks, urging people not to shop at stores whose lunch counters would not allow Black Americans to sit down and eat. Often, white hecklers tried to scare off the protesters by calling them names and threatening violence. Some students were arrested, but the Greensboro sit-ins lasted off and on for 7 months. High school students carried the protest after the college students went home for the summer. Student-led sit-ins soon spread throughout the South. On July 25, 1960, Black people were finally allowed to eat at the Woolworth's lunch counter. The first served were the lunch counter's Black workers, Geneva Tisdale, Anitha Jones, Susie Morrison, and Charles Best. I am very proud of that, said Geneva Tisdale. She had worked behind the counter for over 35 years. We've come a long way, she said. After the 1960s, sit-ins, students and other supporters successfully challenged segregation in other public places, parks, swimming pools, beaches, theaters, restaurants, libraries, courtrooms, and elsewhere. Since then, sit-ins and other forms of civil disobedience have been used by activists around the world. Environmentalists have hugged trees and forests to stop logging operations. Groups have pitched tent cities, large encampments in urban areas to protest poverty and homelessness and other inequalities. And international protesters have formed human chains, people standing hand in hand for miles to focus on social, economic, and political inequality. Like the student sit-ins of 1960, these peaceful forms of resistance send a strong message. Till justice is done, we shall not be moved. And this is a photo of some of the real men who participated in these protests. So these are true stories of things that happened about 60 years ago when people were protesting white supremacy and racism. So why do you think that people today are still protesting racism and white supremacy in the United States? And after you've thought about that, how is white supremacy harming your community now? And after you've taken some time to think about that, what things can you and your family do to resist and confront white supremacy in your community? And after you talked about those things, if you're still interested in learning more about the civil rights movements, of the sit-ins in the civil rights movement, make sure to look up the Royal Ice Cream sit-in, which happened in Durham, North Carolina in 1957, which was actually 3 years before the sit-ins that happened in Greensboro. Thanks for listening, and take care.